If you've been following any of the Call of Duty Black Ops 6 The Truth Dies marketing campaign or played Call of Duty Cold War Zombies, you've probably become pretty familiar with this blue bunny rabbit. Given the name Mr. Peaks, Treyarch has slowly been establishing him as the headliner for the Dark Aether storyline's lore. At this point, almost everybody is aware of his existence, but most people still don't know who Mr. Peaks really is or where he came from. In this video, we'll be getting you up to speed on everything Mr. Peaks in preparation for Black Ops 6 Zombies in the fall, but before we do, hit that like button and subscribe, or Mr. Peaks will come to your house and grind you up into gobblegum sugar. On the surface, Mr. Peaks doesn't appear to be more than a colorful replacement for the classic teddy bear we all came to know and love in the Aether timeline. However, Treyarch has been leaving us little tiny breadcrumbs over the past few renditions of Call of Duty to help us get a better understanding of his origins and overall significance to the zombie storyline. Believe it or not, Mr. Peaks' origin can be traced all the way back to the final hours of the Aether timeline. During the main Easter egg of Tag der Toten, the campfire and the sunken path will give you multiple bits of dialogue where Primus and Ultimus share stories and reflect on their journeys shortly before meeting their ultimate demise. When it's Ultimus Richtofen's turn to share some of his final thoughts and reflect on his life, he chooses not to apologize for any of the damage that he's done. Instead, he talks about how the rest of the Primus and Ultimus crew must be expecting him to pull some last-minute rabbit out of a hat, a big rabbit of betrayal.
I'm not going to apologize for all the terrible things I have done, because frankly, I'm not sorry for anything. Yeah, I've had the time of my life! No, I know you'll probably never really trust me, and even now, you'll be expecting me to pull some last-minute rabbit out of a hat. A big rabbit of betrayal.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thank you, Dennis. I knew I could rely on you. So, do you have a rabbit of betrayal? If I'm honest, I've been expecting one since we all got together. Sadly, no. I am all out of rabbits.
Now, of course, at the very end, Ultimus Richtofen says that he's all out of rabbits, but why would anybody believe anything that comes out of his mouth? His username and password to Griffin Station is literally Teddy is a liar. He's done nothing but lie and deceit to achieve his ultimate quest for pure power throughout his entire life. Now, in no way am I suggesting that Ultimus Richtofen himself is Mr. Peaks. I just find it funny that Treyarch went out of their way to include a 30-second quote from Ultimus Richtofen where he puts heavy emphasis on a rabbit of betrayal right before the collapse of the multiverse, and then one of the first things we're introduced to in the Dark Aether storyline is a rabbit. Please stay with me during this next part of the video because we're going to be going over where Mr. Peaks' first appearance was in the Dark Aether universe, which canonically takes place during Vanguard Zombies. Even though Vanguard is one of the most hated Call of Duty Zombies titles, it's important not to ignore the story that was established during Vanguard's life cycle, as it's a direct prequel to Cold War Zombies, and many of the concepts that were introduced to us in the Vanguard storyline very well may be reintroduced during Black Ops 6 Zombies. Back when Vanguard first came out, the mystery box didn't move on Duran Fang or Terra Maledicta. So when Shinonuma Reborn dropped, it was quite the shock to see that Mr. Peaks was in control of the mystery box, because during Cold War, we were all under the impression that Mr. Peaks' first appearance was during the events of D Machine when the Germans opened up the portal to the Dark Aether. This implies that Mr. Peaks has been around for much longer than both Samantha Maxis and Edward Richtofen have been in the Dark Aether universe. Thus begging the question, where did Mr. Peaks come from and how long has he existed? Throughout Vanguard Zombies, much of the lore is explained to the player by Dark Aether gods in a similar fashion to how Weaver, Carver, Gray, and Strauss are handlers for the players in Cold War Zombies. We won't go into the Dark Aether gods lore too much in this video, but the two most prevalent ones are Cortifax and Syraxis. Cortifax the Deathless serves as the main antagonist for Vanguard Zombies and was born into the royal bloodline of Dark Aether gods. Cortifax was one of the most powerful beings in the Dark Aether, and in order to achieve his goal of becoming top dog amongst the other Dark Aether gods, he had to murder his parents. Along the way, he married the god Syraxis. Now, although Cortifax loved Syraxis, he forbade them from ever having a child because this would eventually lead to the child dethroning Cortifax by killing him and becoming the most powerful being in the Dark Aether, just as Cortifax did to his parents. Syraxis eventually bore a child despite Cortifax's wishes anyways, and as punishment, Cortifax wiped Syraxis' memory, as well as bringing an unknown fate to the child. Now, the working theory is that he trapped the soul of his child inside of a stuffed rabbit, thus giving life to Mr. Peaks. As we move away from Vanguard Zombies, but before we can dive into what we saw from Mr. Peaks in Cold War Zombies, we have to do our best to fill in the gaps of time between Eddie Richtofen entering the Dark Aether timeline after the events of Tag der Toten and the ending of Forsaken. From what we can gather, Eddie Richtofen had a pretty normal childhood, and as he got older, he began to rise the ranks in the United States government. Along the way, he got married to a wife and had a child, which he named Samuel, likely after Samuel Stillinger. Here we can see them all photographed together on Richtofen's desk at the end of Forsaken. Sometime prior to the events of Cold War Zombies, while Richtofen is working for the United States government, Gregory Weaver approaches Samantha Maxis and asks her for help locating a bounty that he'd been tasked with wiping out. The person Weaver had been tasked with killing was none other than Richtofen himself. Samantha agrees to help Weaver locate Richtofen, and before Weaver goes to execute the hit, he is ensured that Richtofen's wife and son would be out of their home. After Weaver believes he successfully killed Richtofen, he sets fire to the house, only to realize that he failed in executing Richtofen and Eddie's wife and son were still in the house. Weaver accidentally killed Richtofen's wife and son, and this is why Richtofen was hellbent on not only torturing, experimenting on, and trapping Samantha inside of the Dark Aether, but also imprisoning Weaver and having him tortured as well at Terminus Island. While this is all really cool storyline information that most people don't know, you're probably still asking yourself how this all ties in with Mr. Peaks. Well, we know that in addition to Richtofen working in the United States government as the head of Requiem, he's also been studying the Dark Aether for quite a long time. It's likely that shortly after Richtofen's son Samuel was killed, Richtofen found a way to keep his son's essence alive by merging his soul with the Dark Aether Harvester Orb. This technology has been around since the original Aether timeline, as Group 935 and Broken Arrow had mastered the ability of merging life forces with orbs, as we see in Gorod Krovi with Dr. Gersh and Alpha Omega with Peter McCain. It's unknown how Richtofen managed to do this in the Dark Aether storyline, but we're introduced to Samuel's essence during the second Outbreak Easter egg. During this egg, you're tasked with locating a special red orb that has the laughter of a child coming from it. After moving the orb to the bridge, you'll have to find and collect Mr. Peaks. Once you've moved Samuel's orb into place and collected Mr. Peaks, both will merge, becoming one and the same, then disappear. You'll also be gifted with an intel note of a child's drawing that you can see on screen now. Mr. Peaks essentially becomes Samuel's guardian, protecting him in the side of the Dark Aether. For the remainder of Cold War Zombies, we don't really get much more on Mr. Peaks other than a few side Easter eggs that reward the players with some goodies. Mr. Peaks also pops up in both MWZ and Warzone for Modern Warfare 3. In MWZ, Mr. Peaks can reward you with free perks, and inside of the Dark Aether portals, interacting with him will start each of the contracts. Not much lore is added to Mr. Peaks in MWZ, but believe it or not, there's actually a secret Warzone calling card that you can unlock by interacting with 10 different Mr. Peaks bunnies around the map. The calling card gives us a detailed look at Mr. Peaks, revealing that he actually has anatomy to him. This confirms that Mr. Peaks isn't just a stuffed Dark Aether relic, but rather he's a living being with internal bones and likely organs too. Of course, this leads us into the present day, where Treyarch has placed him at the forefront of the marketing for Black Ops 6 Zombies. The official cutscene for Terminus, gameplay trailer, gameplay, and blog post detailing just about everything you need to know about Black Ops 6 Zombies was released yesterday, and I have a complete breakdown of all of that in a separate video that I'll link below. But prior to that, we got the Truth Dies marketing campaign, teasing all of the information we received yesterday. During the Truth Dies, heavy emphasis was placed on Mr. Peaks, as he appeared in just about every single teaser on the website. The most exciting teaser and information about Mr. Peaks is that he's now taken over the Gobblegum machine, replacing Dr. Monty. The Gobblegum has been completely rebranded to Mr. Peaks' Gobblegum and given its own jingle. It seems as though Mr. Peaks is continuing to aid in our fight against the zombies, and as the DLC season plays out in Black Ops 6 Zombies, we're likely going to be getting all of the answers and clarity we need to finally understand his origins. I just want to point out really quickly that on the Gobblegum machine itself, we get the shot of Mr. Peaks inside of what appears to be a Dark Aether forest with the pods from Shadows of Evil. I think that one of the DLC maps may even see us going into the Dark Aether to visit this forest and confront Mr. Peaks. That wraps up all of the lore and speculation about Mr. Peaks that Treyarch has currently given us throughout Black Ops 4, Vanguard, Cold War, MWZ, and Warzone. If you guys enjoyed this deep dive into Mr. Peaks' origins, again, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments below if you found this video helpful in understanding Mr. Peaks a little bit better. The hype for Black Ops 6 Zombies is building, and we're officially back in Zombies season. Have a good rest of your day, guys, and stay safe.